Hi, Lauren Welch here, and today I want to talk about Inventor Publisher 2011 R1. R1 was released back on September 29th, and a lot of the functionality that was discussed was centered around the publish to mobile functionality. But there's a lot of other great functionality that's packed into Inventor R1 that I want to talk about today. So some of these functionality include level of detail, bill of material, decal support. So here inside of Inventor you can see I've got a quick level of detail, turning on and off some components, as well as some decals on this particular casting as well. So a few things that before R1 weren't really supported inside of Inventor Publisher. So let's take a look at Inventor Publisher with that same Inventor assembly, and upon opening a few things will happen. The first thing you'll notice is it prompts us for what level of detail we want to use, and we're actually accessing the Inventor Global Bill of Materials. So some very important things right out of the gate. So the first thing you'll notice is, of course, the decal did come over on that casting, and we have a pretty hot looking new marking menu. So I'm going to go ahead and add some new snapshots, just like you've done with the marking menu in Inventor Publisher before. And I'm going to take and just isolate a few components here just to highlight some of the new functionality. So with the isolate command, I can isolate this subassembly and start using it to make some pretty powerful documentation here. So one of the first things I'm going to do with my marking menu is just lay out some very quick snapshots, things that you've seen done before. And again, I can use this auto explode functionality inside of Inventor Publisher. Auto explode's been there in R1. It works the same as you've seen it before. So here I can simply auto explode the geometry, space it out a little bit more appropriately, and then take that final snapshot. Again, letting Inventor Publisher do all the work for me. Now let's go back and take a look at some actual R1 functionality. The first of which I want to discuss is detail views. So I simply select on the screen where I want my detail view to be placed, and then I can simply drag the view. You'll notice I can change the leader style, and I can also use this keep on top, which you'll see with all annotations in R1. I can change the shape of my detail view, and of course any of the arrowheads and formats that I want to use to meet my company documentation standards. Now that detail view is nice, but we've taken it a step beyond there. By double clicking on the detail view, I can actually edit the scope of the detail view, and this is huge. So I'm not just taking kind of a generic detail view or zoom in of what's on the screen. I can do some really creative snapshots, if you will, of how I want to utilize this detail view functionality. So in this case, I'm going to do that same isolate command, and I can actually isolate just the actual subassembly that I'm referring to with the detail view. And again, I'm only changing the detail view. I'm not changing the rest of the canvas of that snapshot that you saw. So I can even go in and I can change the appearance style of just that subassembly, and when I go back into this canvas, you'll see how that detail view can really be customized to really meet your needs inside of Publisher R1. The next thing we'll take a look at is just doing some additional views. So I'm going to do a simple copy and paste with the right mouse click of a snapshot. And on the new snapshot I just pasted in my storyboard, I'm going to go ahead and do a section view. So again, we have the section view capability where I can dynamically drag my section view through my model. When I get it placed where I find it most appropriate, simply click off in the graphic area, and there's my saved off section view. And again, I can adjust my appearance style for this particular snapshot as well. So very quick, very easy, very powerful. The next functionality we'll talk about is related to the bill of materials, or the global bill of materials support from Inventor. So let's change this to a nice technical line drawing, and let's just select a few components here that we want to balloon in this exploded view. With these components selected, I can easily right click and go right to my auto annotate, as I've always been able to do inside of Publisher. And when these come up, we've always been able to associate with iProperties inside of Inventor. So as I change the format, I use that keep on top functionality for my annotations, I can now access information that you'd only see in the global bill of materials, things like item and item quantity. So it automatically is grabbing the item number from that Inventor reference. Let me go ahead and move these balloons and just locate them a little bit more properly. And now I can actually go in, and using the parts list functionality, I can access the global bill of materials from Inventor. You'll notice components that are visible on the screen are the only ones that are selected. And I can auto balloon if I choose to, and I've already ballooned, so I'll turn that off. And I can choose which fields we just show up in my bill of materials or my parts list on my canvas. I can also export this parts list as a CSV file. So let me go ahead and place this on my canvas. Now one thing you'll notice with the parts list functionality is as I select the components in the parts list, it also highlights it graphically on the canvas. So some very cool functionality inside of Inventor Publisher 2011 R1. One of the last bits of functionality I'd like to show is just the integration with the Autodesk Material Library. So you'll know that visualization and material libraries have been consolidated across Autodesk products. So what happens if I have a particular component that somebody did not define the material on inside of Inventor? Well, now I can access that material library that you would see in Inventor or Showcase, and I can add the visualization of the material inside of Publisher itself. And I can actually go back in and I can add things like HDR environments to really increase that level of visualization directly inside of Publisher. So with that added, now I can really add all those more realistic environment to really view my model inside of Publisher in a much more realistic way. So those are some of the quick highlights of Inventor Publisher 2011 R1. That's not all of the new functionality. We've also added Vault integration, obviously the Publish to Mobile, 3D PDF, and Vector. We've also added things like arrows that you can add on your canvas as well. So a lot of cool tools for you to try out.